the potential of Flint, Michigan happening on an island-wide scale on a place the size of Connecticut. Almost all of these water systems do not meet clean water standards. Some are not even subject to testing. According to the National Resources Defense Council, Puerto Rico has the highest rate of drinking water violations in relation to the United States. Okay? This is water. This is a basic need for human life. And this is the reality that we face in Puerto Rico. Continuing on environmental crisis, a majority of the landfills are over capacity, do not meet standards that are already weak. This has created toxic conditions where the garbage mixes with the rainwater, creates toxic gases like methane that affect the quality of air in communities throughout Puerto Rico. And it's no coincidence that most of these landfills happen to be in some of the poorest communities in Puerto Rico. There's a wide number of environmental injustice. Many of you know a little bit about Vieques and the contamination of military bombing experiments to the land in Vieques, which still has not been cleaned up. There's been threats to coastal lands around the island. We have coal-powered plants that are built on estuaries that should be national reserves or international conservation areas that have been exploited time and time again. We have a migration crisis where people are leaving the islands in record numbers. Some estimates that this will be the largest outmigration in Puerto Rican history. I'd give you numbers, but really the numbers have been all over the place in reports, but some have estimated that 20% of the population of Puerto Rico will leave within the next 3 to 5 years. And most people do not want to leave. It's a matter of leaving because there is no employment, there is no real opportunity for you, and in this case, many people who lost their homes will leave to Florida or to Connecticut, New York. Obviously, Puerto Ricans do have a U.S. citizenship that makes that migration pattern really a case study. That it's really unique in that sense. This has led to doctors leaving, which has increased this health crisis. It's a situation where I can't really put into words how extreme the situation is. Okay, and I'm trying here, but there was already existing an inequity in healthcare where Puerto Rican residents only received half of what their benefits should have been on a federal level in a system that isn't working already. And this all in the context of an economic crisis where when you include pension obligations, Puerto Rico is in debt of $120+ billion. Puerto Rico is in a historical crisis. And what you see is disaster capitalism in full effect, where privatization efforts are being presented left and right. When we talk about austerity, 170+ schools were closed. This was before the hurricane, and hundreds more have been proposed for the next few years. There's been $300 million cuts in higher education in the university system, which is really one of the best resources Puerto Rico has, to be quite honest with you. There's been no, the cut of higher education has been happening throughout the United States, but you look at all those numbers, none of them compare to the cuts being proposed or that have already been passed and are continuing to be proposed when you look at Puerto Rico. So this has led to young people who are very much capable of contributing to Puerto Rican society and are more than willing and able to stay and contribute and live and work, and they end up leaving because their prospects are very, very low. Puerto Rico needs to be 100% renewable yesterday. You know, the fact that Puerto Rico is 98% dependent on fossil fuels is an insult. And this requires a change in the relationship to the earth and a relationship to how Puerto Rico operates. We have to understand that Puerto Rico is not a place where democratic rule exists. Puerto Rico is a very corrupt place. Puerto Rico is plagued by corruption. There's a fiscal control board that is unelected, that essentially has say on all fiscal matters. It is wholly undemocratic. Not to mention the political system that has been in place, has been put in place to uphold a colonial system and benefit from, to benefit the elites of Puerto Rico. Okay? This does not take into account most of the people of Puerto Rico, most of whom live under the poverty line, right? What Puerto Rico needs is a transformed economy, one that places the earth and human health first to address these vast environmental injustices that are taking place and that are really only going to worsen. Okay? When we look at Puerto Rico's water crisis that I mentioned, when we look at Puerto Rico's energy crisis that I mentioned, when we look at Puerto Rico's agricultural crisis and lack of food security, the connecting point here is a lack of sovereignty. We cannot expect the elites in Puerto Rico or outside forces, whether they be in Washington, D.C. or elsewhere, to fix Puerto Rico or rebuild Puerto Rico. I'm always skeptical of many of these folks who say they're looking to rebuild Puerto Rico. Again, we need to transform Puerto Rico, and I just hope that what I said here today allows you some insight to look more into the issue. You know, I only had so much time, so I wanted to touch upon a variety of different crises, but ultimately it comes down to disaster capitalism and colonialism, right? And like I said, that economic and political system has expired. We cannot continue, we cannot rebuild something that was already broken. We need to build something new. And we need allies. Again, Puerto Ricans in Puerto Rico do not have political rights that you have. So we need our allies that are willing to empower and support Puerto Ricans and the communities in Puerto Rico to transform what is there, right? Not to allow folks who are just interested in profits, who are just interested in their own self-gain, to take this crisis and these crises and turn it into a situation where we are in an even worse situation, right? Thank you very much. And I do just want to briefly mention a shameless plug before we continue. I don't want to take up too much of your time, but February 28th at 1 p.m., there is a rally for Puerto Rican families of recent people who arrived from Puerto Rico. The Connecticut Puerto Rican Agenda, along with Make the Road CT, are hosting this, are coordinating it with a lot of other support, and there's more information on the internet. So if you look up Connecticut Puerto Rican Agenda, again, that is this Wednesday, February 28th at the Capitol at 1 p.m. Oh, wow. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alexis. wonderful. Thank you for being such a strong advocate. And now I would like to welcome up